Hey everyone. Can you guys
Good
all
morning.
hear me?
Here.
Great. So I'll be the first one to put it out here because we're doing a transition from Mike to myself. Uh, as I admit everybody in here, you guys will be the first ones to hear. Bear with me because the process will be a bit clunky at first as I kind of get my sea legs, if you will, underneath me. But I'm really excited actually to kind of have this group here to kind of just talk about some of these things. And my approach is a little bit different than Mike. I think we both have high energy, which I love, and I think that's half the battle. Um, but I think you'll see. And I also think it's important that you guys give me feedback too, because I want this to be really impactful for you. As I was kind of thinking about the sessions and how I want to run them. I think everybody knows when you're on sessions like this, the worst thing is somebody who gets up there and they're just saying stuff that like, oh yeah, we've heard this before, and you're not getting a lot of value out of it. So, some of my approaches might be new as far as I've never heard somebody talk it like that before or approach it from that perspective. And I want this to be more of a discussion, less of a one way. And I want you guys to stress test too, right? Like we're all here to get better. Uh, as the session is described, it's coaching, right? I don't proclaim to know everything. This is just coming from my experience of over 20 years doing it. And I've had some good teachers and learned from some good people. So hopefully you guys will benefit from that. Um,
Perspective is everything.
yeah. And I'm not sure when Mike kind of cuts off. I know the people just kind of coming on. We're up to 24. I don't even know what the typical level is of people joining these calls, but until 8:30, which I think we're at right now,
I
I'm going to
think
keep letting
he
people
usually
in.
gives it like a minute or two, but not
A
like
minute
that
or two.
much. I've
Okay.
noticed no more than like 30 people, 40
Okay.
top. So
Well, we're at 27 now. Give me 1 second. I'm actually going to go get some notes real quick. And of course, as fate would have it today, my office is actually closed because assuming there's a power outage. So you guys get the benefit of me in my place
where are you
speaking.
located?
I'm actually in Beverly Hills,
Mm.
so like West Hollywood, Beverly Hills. I don't know how familiar you guys are with that area.
I stayed at the Beverly Hills Hotel once.
Well, there you go. It's right. It's less than a mile away from me.
Yeah.
So there
What
you
was
go.
that like doing when you had like ocean like a year ago when the like those big rainfalls?
Oh yes, yeah. We actually had a repeat of that too. So it was last February where it got really bad. Let me actually. I'm going to present my screen, but I want to pull up the presentation. Give me 1 second. So you'll notice that the presentation that I'm going to share with you today, which we'll go through, will look a little bit different than Mike's. Give me 1 second as I go into this presenter view. All right, and let me just present my screen. Share. All right. 1 sec. Can you guys see my screen?
No. Now,
No.
yes.
There it is.
Now, yes.
All right. So I'm still letting people in, but we're going to start here because I know time is money. And as I like to say, can't afford to be a minute late. So guys, today we are going to talk about data-driven prospecting and transforming your sales approach. So, whenever I think about prospecting and just reaching out to people, right? Whether it's email, whether it's phone call, whatever medium you use to do it, there's always the anxiety of like doing the actual thing, right? Motivating to actually get on the phone, less so about the emails, but get on the phone because it's confronting, someone who might say no, right? And I think a lot of people tend to think, especially with cold calling, that when someone says no, they're saying something about them. And the reality of it is that they're not. They're just saying, I'm not interested in what you have to offer. This is not an indictment on who you are as a person, just not who you have, what you are. I'm just not interested in what you're offering right now. So when we move beyond that and we start to do this outreach, I think the thing that people kind of get paralyzed with is, how do I organize all this, right? How do I know what's a good lead versus a bad lead? The conversation I had, if you're fortunate to have a conversation with someone, is that a good conversation? Is it a bad conversation? Like, when do I know to follow up? How do I organize? How do I segment? And how do I frame this as it relates to what's my objective? Like, what am I doing every day? And I want to let you guys know you aren't alone. I remember when I first started cold calling, I didn't know what I was doing. And this was like the big, oh my God, I got to get over this hurdle. Like, what am I saying? Actually, I have someone on the phone. They're interested. I forgot what my pitch. I'm literally stuck. All right. And when you're stuck and you can't make that progress, or even when you do make progress, a lot of people just aren't listening to cues, right? The responses you get, whether it's, hey, now's not the right time, or I'm not interested in what you're selling. What you're hearing from the audience can actually be used, if you're open to it and listening, used in a way to inform how you actually determine which is the best path to follow up with, what's the best time to follow up with, and how do I follow up with a prospect. So today we're going to walk through, and again, this is where my approach is a little bit different. I know Mike likes to give some high level kind of bullet points and statistics about 2 out of 10 do this. And like, if you're not doing this, then 80% of your things will fail. And all that is true. But I actually don't think those things are meaningful to you guys. I just think it's like, yeah, it's interesting information, but what does it mean for me? Right. And this is about you and your business and what's on your desk and what you're dealing with every day. So the purpose of this call will actually be just to kind of go through some tips and tactics as it relates to how you organize information, what information is valuable, how you think about information and what to do with it, and how do you organize and segment. Does that make sense for everybody? Yeah, just thumbs
Yes.
up. All right. So let me move some of these things here. So a big piece to this is, interrogating the data. So everybody talks about tracking, right? So, all right, I've made this many dials, right? Put it in your CRM. You know who you're calling. Maybe you have a mail sequencing set up, and all that's fine and dandy, right? All that stuff, yes, you need to be doing, but this is about understanding each lead and making sure you're not just making yourself feel comfortable about, hey, I'm sending emails out, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, this is what they said to be doing, and actually making sure that every single outreach is purposeful, right? So when you start to look at your data, and if you are organizing it in a way where you're able to not just say, hey, I made a cold call, but actually put notes in there. What was said during that cold call? What feedback do I get? And then when you use that information and think about, okay, there are the days in which I am cold calling where I'm most successful. Maybe I'm not successful. There's an insight there, right? A lot of people don't recognize that, the activity they're doing You know, you might not have the best window, you might not be calling on the best day, and all that is really helpful, right? So people just exist and say, hey, well, I'm doing the things that they said that I should be doing, but I'm just not cutting through. And I think the main point here that I want you guys to take away with is there are learnings that you will gather even when you're not successful that you can apply to your business, right? And so I have here interrogate the data, right? So ask why, right? Challenge these assumptions. Well, I was told that Tuesdays are the best time to call. Okay, well, Tuesdays you're really not that successful. Like, is there something happening at the time and window in which you're calling, with what your message is, with the day that you just may not be aware of for your specific audience that it just may not be hitting? And I'll give you an example. If you are calling an area where, you know, there's a ton of business owners that are there, or, you know, ultra high net worth working professionals, you know, cold calling during the middle of the week, during the middle of the day might not be the best time to call, right? You're probably not going to get a response. If you do get somebody on the horn, they're probably agitated that you're calling them during the day. And again, a lot of this is just like how we feel when someone actually does it to us, right? So your consumer, your customer, whoever's on the other end, like, think about how you would feel, and it's safe to say that they probably feel a similar way, right? So when you start to look at, hey, I'm putting together a list of prospects, and I know this about these prospects, because this is a big piece of this too. Understanding who you are actually targeting, right? Characteristics, attributes about them, understanding because of those things, what might your communication need to look like? What times of day, what days of week you might need to be sending communication out to have the best outcomes, right? All of these things go into it. But the first thing I think when looking at, are you examining and organizing your data in the right way, is yes, you will have people who you reach out to who will respond to you in your CRM. When you start to track this, make sure that you are tracking all of these things related to time in which you called, message in which you used, any notes that are pertinent, right? If you have a conversation. And if they said no and gave you information as to why no, make sure you track that also, right? And I think one of the things that I see when I look at agents on my team is when they go about prospecting and when we look at their CRM, there's no notes in there. There's like, did they respond? Did they not respond? Is there a follow-up time set? And it's very, very, let's just say it doesn't look like it's complete. And so when they come back to me and say, well, Brandon, I'm not really having success. And I ask them, well, why don't you think you're successful? Give me a hypothesis. They don't know, right? They're like, well, I just can't get in contact with anybody. I can't get past the first couple words. And I say, well, describe to me your target. And it's never clear who their target is. And I go, well, this is probably the first challenge, is understanding who you're actually reaching out to and jotting notes down, right? And before you just go out and call people, understand and set the stage, right? Knowing who you're talking to. And then once you get that data, map it back to, does the outcome mirror the prospect and their behaviors? And instead of just literally dialing, going, and thinking, yes, I'm doing the activities, it's a numbers game, I'll be successful, which is partly true. There's real rich information you can gather just by looking at your outcomes in relation to who you're prospecting, sitting there and say, what patterns are emerging, right? You'll start to see some anomalies, and there's value in those anomalies. The failures that you have, right, when looking at that list, is there something that can be gleaned, or is there a common thread amongst, hey, these people didn't respond? Is there something that is similar about this segment of these prospects? So really the build point here is that there's a treasure trove of data that you will get when reaching out to people, and don't just take a no and be satisfied with it. Examine the no's, examine the times where you do get someone on the phone who you didn't expect. And when you go back and do the postmortem on your success each and every day as you make these calls, think about the themes and trends that are emerging. Think about what's been said in the conversation. And it's tough to do that if you're just trying to remember. Be methodical about your note taking, because in those notes, there's a ton of value. So I mentioned this earlier about kind of testing hypotheses, right? Not just throwing out random tactics, right? So understanding that area that I'm talking about. Now, what you see on the screen here, that's really granular, right? I believe absentee owners in this zip code with 40% plus equity and 6% mortgage, are prime listing targets. That's a bit really, really specific, right? But you should definitely know when calling out to people, what is your understanding and what do you know to be true? Or what are you trying to get, right, out of this actual communication tactic, right? Like, is there something you know to be true about this? And even if it's not true, can you go in with an assumption? And largely going with the assumption is valuable because you're establishing a hook, if you will. Right? And so this is another thing. And you'll see here, I'm oscillating between the act of cold calling and then the actual tracking of the results. But I think that they're, inextricably linked. So when going into these cold calls, a lot of people will, maybe they have a general idea. Hey, now's a great time to list your home. Really not useful. I think on the last call, I talked about, having something that kind of humanizes the approach, a shared connection moment that we're all facing. So something in the news, maybe something happening locally, and how that thing actually applies to this opportunity. But you need a hook, right? And when you start to look at the areas which you're farming and your outreach strategy, right, there you need to have a hypothesis, right? Why are you going after these people? Why are these people, why is this population of value to you, right? Presumably you want to transact or get to that point, right? Whether it's getting a listing, finding a buyer, whatever it is, there is something in your head that you need to be orienting around as to what is going to be your hook. What's the reason to believe? What's going to get them engaged? What do you know to be true? And what do you not know to be true, which is the discovery part of the call. But once you go in with a hypothesis, you have an anchor for these calls and you can experiment, right? You may have a hypothesis based on data in an area that you've seen that you think is valuable, that you want to present to that individual who's on the other line. And that individual may say, hey, that doesn't really apply to me, or I don't think that's true. Great. It's not a no, it's a data point, right? So your hypothesis may not be true, fair, but your hypothesis may not be resonating with that audience, maybe because they don't know that it actually is meaningful to them, but you're getting information there, which you can apply. So your job on these calls is, yes, or in any form of outreach, and I'm speaking specifically about cold calling because that's the most challenging one. Your job on these calls is to get information. I think everybody goes in and thinking I can close. Once you have a hypothesis and you start to test it, you can start to experiment. This piece of information, what's the most effective way, most digestible way to get this across? What is the best way to deliver it in a conversation from a timing perspective? What are people responding to with the information? What are they not responding to? And over time, you refine this approach. But as you reflect on those calls, this is why the note-taking is incredibly important. Because when you reflect on it at the end of the day, you'll then establish what's working, what's not, what should I lead in with, what should I not deliver immediately? Okay, who did I call? What does their profile look like? Oh, well, this may be the reason why this isn't resonating with them. Right? So all of these things you need to be tracking. And this is where I find agents kind of, they get frustrated or they feel as if their effort is not warranting the results. We know how difficult this is. right? This is a numbers game, but you can be smart with how you approach each one and see patterns in these numbers to where it doesn't take 2,000 calls, 1,000 calls to get a prospect. You can actually get one sooner if you're reflecting on the themes and trends that are emerging. And guys, stop me if this is not making sense here. Again, I want this to be interactive, not one way. If you guys have questions, feel free. I know the chat box is.
I have a question. I just typed it
Sure.
in, but my writing might not make sense. I guess one, I didn't realize you were talking about cold calling. A lot of my business is cold calling, so I'd love to, and I don't think Mike really focused on it. I didn't get to go to the last session, like last quarter, so I don't know what he said about that.
Yep.
But Mike really focused on like making a list of all your spheres and then calling them and doing 10 a day.
Yep.
And I guess he said make notes, but I do have a cold calling background. I've worked at Zillow and at Staples. And they did touch base on the notes part, but like when you say notes, would you like write 12 o'clock, 12:10, 12:15, and then like I guess I just would love you to go a little bit more detail in the notes aspect, so we're able to analyze it in, whatever that might look like, because that makes sense to me. I just don't know how to.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great point. And a lot of this is, in these CRMs, and I don't know which ones you guys use. If you guys are using Business Tracker within Compass.
Yeah, I meant Business Track. I meant through Compass as like personal CRM. Now my Business Tracker is a hot mess because I do call a lot of these people and I try to get them onto a collection. And then from there, from the collection, I try to meet them and vice versa as a point. But so I do feel like there's a lot of steps and not a lot of outcome. And
yes,
I would love to be able to maybe cut this. I'm a millennial, so I'm very impatient. So
I know this is the challenge.
Some of it down and make more like I would love to make streamlined a little bit. I think is work hard, work less, or whatever. I mean, whatever the saying is. I'm a hard worker.
Yeah. I think as we like to say for my company Navigate, it's prospect smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think a lot of people are actually, you get these lists wherever you're getting them from, and if you are cold calling or if you're emailing, I think people think that there is a win in let me just get out as many as I can. And they just start, which is good, right? Like there's always this reluctance to actually just start doing it, right? The fear of actually doing it. Mm-hmm. But like anything, it is, and I think back on marketing, it is understanding your target. And so, Jessica, one of the things that I love doing, which I don't know if you guys interact with a ton, I certainly do, is something like ChatGPT, right? If you have like zip codes, right, or any information on that population of people, let's just say you're calling, like put it in the ChatGPT, be like, help me understand this group, right? However you are profiling them, right? What is the best time to reach out to them? What does the makeup look like? Are they working professionals, right? Help me understand who it is that I'm actually calling and talking to and who I'm making this outreach to, right? And I think taking like these steps at the very beginning will start to improve your conversion rate, right? Because then you'll start to see, okay, like I know a little bit about this demographic. I know a little bit about their psychographic, what they respond to, just a little bit more about these people who I'm reaching out to.
Most of my people are Zillow leads or StreetEasy leads. So like they're calling on an apartment in a specific zip code that I either worked on or I'm paying for. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're calling in from 10029. They could be calling in from God knows where because they're looking at a deal. So that's, I haven't ever bought lists. I mean, I don't know how much you know about Compass's stuff, but I also have a lot. I also, and I'm sorry I'm taking over this chat, but I also throw in a lot of co-ops of buildings, and then Compass's likely to sell gives us. Mm-hmm. So those are like everybody that I have. I can't speak I would love to, I think Michael Mark, the guy from Florida, mentioned he does a lot of cold calling. So if he wants to pipe up, so.
Yeah, listen, I'd love to hear this because it's wherever you're sourcing leads from, right? Like that's just one assumption. You might be actually getting information that's from all over the place, right? So it's tough to kind of organize.
Mhm.
But you know, for people who are actually cold calling and doing this, like I'd love to hear, you know, where they run into challenges here and like if they're successful or not, how they think about, you know, organizing that information. I know that my team right now, they don't do a great job, right? They're getting these lead lists, they're reaching out, not knowing anything about who they're reaching out to, and they're putting a lot of friction points in front of themselves when it doesn't necessarily have to be like this. And then when they're getting that information, they're not reflecting on the why. Like, why did this happen? And so all they're stuck with is, I had a bunch of names, I ran through them, I didn't really have a strategy, I didn't
Yeah.
document anything that I learned, and now like it's almost been a waste. God forbid
That's
I
how I
paid for
feel.
that.
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling. Um,
I can jump in here.
Sure.
yeah, that Michael, that's the guy. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring you up, but I know you.
That's okay.
No, it's good though. It's good.
I love talking. It's hard to shut me up.
Same.
I have been doing, I've been in the business for a really long time. I had a big company I got rid of. And I came over to Compass. I just brought a couple of people with me. So I'm back into being a full-time agent rather than being, I do have a team, but I'm trying to do things, build, my own thing. And I do a lot of cold calling and I have a dialer, and a lot of what you're saying, I notes are critically important. But with the cold calling, if you take time to analyze every single person you're going to call, you'll never make the calls and you'll have analysis paralysis. So
Yes.
what I have found is that when you're calling it expireds or for sale by owners or seasoned expires, is the hardest part is just getting them to talk to you, because I go
Yep.
through so many numbers of people who just blow me off, curse at me, hang up, don't answer the phone. But the people who I actually can engage with, the notes are so critically important.
Yeah.
Everything they say, repeating and putting it down, because it's not the first call. I think most of my conversions are call 7, 5, 6, 7, 8, sometimes 9. And I have a folder system call 1 through 10 and months January through December, where I just write down everything they say. And if I get somebody who will talk to me and seems like somebody who will at least give me the time to hear what I have to say, once I put them in the business in the contact in our CRM and Compass and show them the technology, it's like almost a given that they're going to continue a conversation with me. So I agree with you. The notes are great for follow up. So you said you were moving here and you have to be here by this time, and what would happen if you could move. But that initial phone call with the cold calling, just getting a contact who will talk to you, I believe is the biggest challenge that I have, because I go through a lot of numbers before I actually get somebody on the phone
Yeah.
that'll speak to me.
And Michael, I think what you're saying is really valuable. And I'm saying something slightly different. Everything that you said, I agree with, right? But I want you guys to realize that there's also value in, Michael, when you're not getting someone to talk to you, or like you just can't get someone on the phone, or even if you do and they're like, I'm not interested right now. When looking at, okay, is it the time of day in which I'm calling? Is it the group of people that I'm calling? And understanding the demographic, because in that, you actually might be able to apply that in your next day. Like there's a
Yeah.
learning there too, not just the information they're sharing with you, 100%, because you want to apply that to the next call, right? And even in some of the calls that you are having with individuals, you might be getting information that you could apply to your next call, right?
Right.
And what I like to say is, just to let you know how this looks like in a conversation, is let's just say, Michael, you and I had a great conversation around maybe your interest in listing right now because something had changed in your life, or maybe something had happened at the local level. If I'm able to get the next person who I'm calling on the phone, I might actually even use that as an antidote and be like, it's interesting. I was just talking with a gentleman who was just experiencing the same thing, right? Little notes like, or little drops or hints like that actually make the person that you're talking to feel as though, oh, well, this individual must be talking to a lot of people, right? It diffuses the tension and it actually builds your credibility. just by alluding to something, whether that something is actually factual or not, right? And by no means am I saying lie, but give the appearance as though I'm talking to a lot of people. These tensions, these feelings you have are quite normal. You're not alone, Mr. or Mrs. X, right? A lot of times that gets you your foot in the door in these conversations.
Yeah, sets you up as the expert. That's what
Sets
they
you up as
want.
the expert. And really, when we're talking about this conversation, I mean, this might shift a bit because we know that cold calling, it is a numbers game, right? There are people who just aren't going to answer. It could be a dead lead that doesn't even work. But you know, if you are fortunate enough to have, and one of the things is I'm not saying I'm always successful, but I watch people who cold call and they kind of sound robotic. One of the things that I do when I cold call, which is so counterintuitive, but I actually think it helps, is sometimes using words like not sounding so scripted, right? Knowing what you are saying, but sounding humane and not like an AI chatbot, right? When you're saying it. And here's a little tip that I saw, which I thought was brilliant, which is a great way if someone does answer the phone. And by the way, these are some of the things that you can put into your notes as to what was effective. We talk about that design experiment on the screen. Here's a perfect example. When you cold call John Smith, let's just say, you might take those names that you have on your list, run them through LinkedIn, see if you have any mutual connections, especially if you're farming your local area. Like, hey, is John Smith there? Yeah, this is John speaking. Hey, John, looks like we're connected on LinkedIn through X, Y, and Z. So automatically you move from this random person calling to, oh, okay, you're in my sphere, you're in my network, or I'm associating with this person who I like. And then now that diffuses the tension. All right. Now, certainly, like Michael said, when you have large lists, that is very, very tough to do. But if you're farming on a small area, you might think to run it through something like a LinkedIn to see if you happen to have a connection or something shared with that person, right? Especially if this is a farm of great importance to you. Like if you're talking to high net worth individuals, like that might be a tactic to where you are connected to someone and you use that broker, if you will, to actually get that person to listen to what you're saying. And so, Jessica, when you reflect back on how do we use the notes, right? That is a tactic that I used that actually was successful, or maybe got a prospect to start talking to me about something, right? That maybe I should replicate. And so those are the things that I'm talking about here. Yes, there's the, I got to make 10 calls a day. I got to do this. I got to do this. That is the basics, right? We know it's a numbers game and you got to make the dials. What I'm trying to tell you guys is make sure that you are just spending time at the end of the day looking at, is there something that is emerging here? I called 100 people, nobody answered. Is it a time of day thing, right? Do I know who I'm targeting? What do I know about them? And does the outcome, what I got, map back to the audience in which I'm targeting? It makes sense. Like, this is what this group looks like. This is probably why they didn't answer. Let me try a different time. All right. I used this tactic today to reach out to people. Let's just say the LinkedIn tactic. All right. And I actually got 7 people on the phone and I got them to have a conversation. Wow, this seems to be a really useful tactic here. Let me try to scale that. Let me use that approach more often, right, to get a better outcome. So that's kind of what I'm talking about with the notes, Pete. I think when Michael said 100%, right, making sure you're getting with that information, following up with that. Clients want to see that because they know that you listen. Take that information. How is this valuable, right? Bringing them opportunities. I think on the last call that we did last week, doing that follow-up, right? About like, hey, you said this. I saw an opportunity. I wanted to bring this to your attention, right? I think people value that. You listened, you digested, you observed, spotted something, and then came back to me with an idea and opportunity that I didn't know existed. I think you're a value to me, right? Let's continue the conversation. So this is the piece here that I place a lot of emphasis on, right? Data is one thing, and obviously knowing about who you're calling, knowing the size of that audience, if you will, that you're reaching out to, but understanding kind of how they make decisions. And when we talked about this, right? How can I, what are some common themes or common kind of attributes of the people who I'm speaking to or reaching out to, and blending together the data on them, right? If you're fortunate to get it, right? Maybe you know something about their background. Maybe you know something about, their income levels, if they have a family, if they're married or not, depending on where you're actually sourcing this data. And blending kind of some of that data with the power of just like humanity, the psychology, right? And weaving that into your story, right? If you know they have a family, and they might be looking to, let's just say, move into a larger home. There might be a window in which that's a better time in which to do so, to look for homes. You might be talking to someone who is selling, who's looking to, yes, I need to move into a larger home. Now's the time to actually, now's the time that I'm actually looking to make a move. Well, great. Like, here's what's happening in the market. All these things in your conversations, if you can kind of weave in what you know to be true about the time of the market, right? Available inventory with their situation to create an opportunity, obviously is going to make these calls and this outreach much more effective. But just knowing when people make decisions, knowing a little bit about their situation, right, before going into the call. And all this is really dependent on a lot of where you're sourcing data from, right? If you're getting cold lead lists, you don't really get a lot of that information. You'll see a lot of platforms like mine included, Navigate, but others, where you get a treasure trove of data on people, which is helpful because you can start to blend in that psychology with the data to make your calls a bit more effective. So I think all that is helpful. And when you start to find out, like, hey, this individual, these people in this area, this core theme, this is working really, really well and hunting really, really well with this audience, right? You can start to replicate things, test certain messages, and then get a better outcome from a lot of this. But again, having this kind of one trick pony when you do cold outreach, again, you're doing the process, you're calling them, but you're trying the same tactic and it's not cutting through. All right. Just pausing and knowing that there's other pieces of data that you can piece together, start telling a more effective story to maybe have a better entry point, a foot in the door to have a more substantive conversation. And that is just understanding, again, the market, right? Not just going at it blindly. And I know we're over on time, so we're just going to transition here because this is all kind of blending together. This is kind of what we were talking about here. You got to make sure your lists are, one, relevant, right? That you have the right data, right? The data quality is obviously going to impact everything you do and waste your time, right? So wherever you're sourcing leads from and wherever you are, who you're reaching out to, whether it is by email, clearly making sure that those emails are relevant, making sure that the owner contact is relevant. All of the stuff that you get that is not relevant, making sure you remove that because that's junk. Prioritize the ones where you have the most amount of contact information, right? We talk about segmentation, right? How are you organizing this list of people, right, around either key themes, key attributes? So when you go and make those calls, you have an idea of what this population looks like, right? And when you make the calls and you get information, is that information being verified by that client or prospect. And if it's not, making sure you jot that down, right? And if it is, great, right? Like, did they validate everything that you came into the conversation knowing, if you can get that far in the conversation? And how do I organize this group of people, right? So I was successful with these individuals based on, and these individuals exhibited these qualities or attributes, or these properties exhibited these qualities or attributes, and segmenting that, right? This is another piece that agents sometimes miss when looking at it. And Mike, you're a good example here. When you call out on prospects and you're able to have that conversation with them, right? Whether there's some common themes or threads that emerge within those, but the information that you're getting from them, how are you organizing that information to influence what the next conversation is, or grouping these individuals? And once you start to understand that, right, like, you then start to have these little pockets of people that you have, which are qualified prospects, that you can define and kind of create an approach with, right? Just by knowing a little bit more about them through that kind of question and answer process. So Mike, just because I know you have a lot of experience here and told us basically, like, when you were able to get someone on the phone, you get a lot of good data and you put it in the notes section. Once you put it in the notes section, how are you organizing the next kind of outreach?
Well, if it's, and now I'm speaking strictly from cold calling. I know most of these classes talk about using your CRM and your Sphere, which that's what I want to get to the point where I don't have to make these calls. But what I do is, when I have the initial conversation, if I can't get an appointment immediately, I will follow up with them, and I have a predetermined amount of time. I, just tell them I'm going to follow up with you, and it depends on if it's an expired or if it's sell by owner. But I try to, by the time I make my second call, like I said, I have day 1 through 10 and months, January through December, and depending on the content of the conversation, I segmented it into different lists, and I will then do a little bit of research. And I know as realtors, we have such amazing tools that you could find out so much information about people. And just if I see a similarity, I have groups of fishing, people who like firearms, bourbon. I mean, I have all these different groups, and I try to find something similar that we like. And then my follow-up call, I'll try to include something that shows, that humanizes the conversation and makes it more service or more fun, more than sales related, because that hard sales pitch never seems to work for me. I try to have fun with people, but I always try to find something that I have in common with them. And if I have nothing in common, it'll definitely be something about our micro market, because I call a very small area because I don't want to have to go 40 miles in any direction. If it's going to be between Broward County, which is not that big, and there's always something happening in the county, something in the news, something I can start a conversation to just kind of loosen up that second call, and then move into, hey, you said this, this, and this. So I segment it into similarities that we have, things that we like, or just something of value that I can bring up to kind of soften the phone conversation. If people are motivated and really want to sell or buy, it's not that difficult to engage them, because if they're receptive to your second call, usually it's just a matter of time before they make a decision. It's the expireds that I know I have to get to immediately. So those I know I have to call first thing in the morning. But if I get somebody who's not an expired, of a sale by owner, or somebody circle prospecting who's kind of thinking down the road, they're much easier conversations. I think the expireds are the hard ones that you have to get fast and furious, get in the door right away. But always some kind of commonality is what I look for when I do my call 2, call 3, call 4, call 5. And after call 10, if they're not interested, I just cut them out of my list and I move on to somebody else.
Yeah, and I think that last point's a great point, right? Like, as a seller, not someone selling their home, but just as what we are, right? Someone who's selling, after a yes, the next best thing is a fast no, right? So if you are actually able to get somebody to talk, you better make sure that your questions that you are answering with them, and yes, there's we're having a conversation, not sounding salesy, but
Right.
making sure that those questions are really purposeful to gauge intent, right? And it's okay if they're not ready, right? And you might say, you sound like someone who's maybe not ready, and that's totally fine. do you mind if I actually, keep your contact information, follow up with you when I see an opportunity, or please let me know when the time is right. But at least you're not doing call 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and they're just, leading you on, if you will, never ever going to do anything. Right. So
Right.
there's value in knowing who you're talking to, and whether it's your sphere, which I think that's another piece of this too. There's the cold calling, and there's the how do I work my sphere. Is it's not. I think people think it's a bad thing to be very direct, right? People aren't stupid, right? They know that like you're having a conversation with them. As much as I might like you, there's a reason why we're having a conversation, right? Like, let's just be honest. Think about yourself when someone's doing that to you. You know it. I actually, in some of my conversations, I go like, okay, like, let's just get to it, right? Like, why are we beating around the bush? And people appreciate that. But I'm only able to do that because I've established a rapport, right? And they can respect it. And I think the directness actually sometimes people appreciate because everybody is busy, right? And you talk about acknowledging these tensions or these truths that we know about people, right? A lot of times I'll go in and be like, listen, you're probably busy just like I am, right? I just want to make sure, is this something of interest to you right now? And it's okay if it's not. You're not a bad person if it's not. I just want to know, how do I organize you and segment you so I can get on to my next thing? And I think you can appreciate that as someone who does business. And being that confident in it, you'll win a lot of people's respect. Now, again, maybe not the approach for everybody, but when you have these conversations with people, you'll start to understand who they are, what resonates with them, the nature of the dialogue, the degrees of freedom you have in that dialogue, when you can inject in some humor in that dialogue, right? And the people that you can actually be like, hey, like, I oftentimes get a lot of opportunities that come across my desk. Do you mind if I follow up with you if I get one of those? I was just talking to my buddy Jim yesterday and was telling him about this property down the street. And he's like, oh man, Brent, I was looking for that. And you may not be that person that likes that, and it's totally fine. You just let me know what's the best way to communicate with you if I do get an opportunity like this that comes across. Right. Instead of just assuming. So Mike, I know you raised your hand.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so I just was curious about, this is sort of like transitioning from that last point of, sphere of influence versus cold calling. Obviously, Mike Walker focused pretty heavily on sphere of influence and making sure you're leveraging the relationships you currently have versus cold calling. This, first, obviously this is the first call of yours, Brandon. It seems like we're, obviously it's a great foundational concept as far as like note taking, definitely super important. I'm just wondering, is there I don't know, I guess like a sort of like a roadmap for what we can anticipate for like future prospecting track calls? Like, are you going to do absentee owner focused stuff one week, FISBO stuff another week, sphere of influence another week, just because of like this sort of transition from sphere of influence to now we're just like sort of coming up with the basic concepts of effectively cold calling. I think I know probably not alone in wondering how this track is going to be set up for the rest of the quarter.
Yeah. And listen, I think my approach, and thank you for that information. Mike, it seems, really spent a lot of time on, hey, you guys have really built a network here, your sphere of influence. How are you getting the most out of them? Is that correct?
Yeah, more or less. Like I think one of the first questions I asked is, which cold calling avenue should I go down first? Should it be absentee owner? Should it be expired? He was like, why are you not working your sphere?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was that.
Yeah. And I think it's good intel. And you guys tell me what's more valuable, because there's a couple different things here, right? So there is your sphere. And while there is value in there, I've always found that, like, yeah, your sphere can tap out, right? And you want to make sure that you have kind of an always on prospecting approach. And this is what, I teach a lot of our agents. Depending on what you guys want to focus on, because there's strategies obviously for the sphere, which we can certainly go down, and we can make sure that the calls moving forward are, how do we really get more out of the sphere? Or there's this path where, hey, like my sphere's kind of tapped out. Like, I think I've done all the things, that Mike's, the advice he's given me. I think I've really gotten all I can get out of them. Like, I got to build a business, and I got to build a business fast that's beyond my sphere, because I can only go back to them so many times with the same message. And this is kind of the territory that I found that a lot of people are just unfamiliar with. And how do I make sense out of it? And how do I grow a business beyond my sphere that like literally is just bigger, right? And so I don't know, it's really depending on what's valuable for you guys. We can go down both paths. We can choose one path. I'm open to doing either. I just want to make it effective to you. I have experience in both. And I'd say, Mike, probably more on the mining your own sphere side. But I've also found that, embracing this, well, how do I actually build my sphere bigger, right? Beyond my network can be really valuable. So I'd love to hear from the group, because we can frame it. I can do whatever you guys want. You let me know.
I think they're both important. I think Mike Walker definitely got us off on a pretty solid start regarding sphere of influence. So I'm not discounting cold calling at all. I guess I'm just sort of wondering what the structure is going to be like. Are we going to focus next week just on some additional foundational stuff for cold calling in general, and then move over to there's so many sub topics within cold calling and sub legs that we can sort of reach out into. So I guess I'm just wondering, just overall, what the structure will be.
Yeah. So for the really, this is meant to be a prospecting kind of track, right? And every single week we're going to be talking about obviously different parts of prospecting. This week was around how do we actually make your CRM and the data that you're getting, right? How do we organize it? How do we make sure that we're scheduling our follow-ups? Are we doing the right amount of follow-ups? And I think for this specific call, I think you guys, and you tell me, I think you guys know, like, hey, like I need to be putting a structure in place that, where I have people that are in my kind of contact list in my CRM, and I'm reaching out to them. And I approached it from a standpoint of how do you build the CRM? And moving forward, I think I will structure it more about when looking at potential prospects that are in your sphere, what are the different ways to get them from prospect to client, right? Along the funnel, right? Where do they sit? How do I move them through the funnel? From, hey, I know who you are, to I might be interested, to, let's work together. So I'll structure that. And again, Mike, I'm not sure if you guys have the agenda for the calls moving forward. If not, we can share that with you. But for the subsequent calls, it'll kind of be focused on how do we bring people through that funnel that are in your sphere.
One thing that's worked for me through the years is actually growing the base sphere. So for example, I work with a wealth advisor. We both want the same clients. We both want to share information. So I created kind of a networking based sphere, and then we help each other and share with each other to grow our sphere. And the one thing I always tell people is warm leads, your return on investment is, infinitely higher. So create a warm lead, sphere that grows, and then keep in touch with them. It's less of a needle in the haystack, and that's been very successful.
Yeah, and I think that's right. And Namita, I want to make sure, because I see you raising your hand, that you have. I think you're on mute, Namita.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if David had finished, but that's a good thing about the warm sphere. So, going back to the cold calling, I've been in the business a long time and I used to do a lot of cold calling. And in some cases, I could write notes, but I didn't always write notes. So I know I fell off the track, but I did expires for sale by owners. So now what we have is zero for sale by owners or expired, and absolutely no way to cold call because everybody has gone off their home phone numbers. They're few and far between. And how does one get their cell phone numbers? So that's my challenge. So do you have a suggestion for that? Or does Michael Zeoli have a suggestion for that?
I get them through a dialer. I use a dialer. The way I look at it is if you're the gentleman who just spoke about working with a wealth advisor, if you have a connection like that, somebody who an estate attorney or a divorce lawyer or you know a social worker or somebody who is constantly feeding you leads, that's great. But if somebody picked me up from South Florida, I'm not in I'm in Cape Cod right now, but if somebody picked me up from South Florida and dropped me down anywhere in the country and I didn't know anyone in my sphere was back in Florida and I had to feed my family, I know that the skills I've learned for cold calling and calling expireds and FISBOs and absentee owners would translate to anywhere in the country, and I could use those skills to within 6 months, you know, be very productive. So using a dialer like I have is invaluable to me because as Brandon was saying, you get the leads and you have to always be filling your database because you want to do deals in 1 week, 1 month, and 1 year, 2 years down the road. So every one of those contacts goes into your CRM through Compass, and it's such an amazing contact manager. And the tools that we have are top of the, you know, you can't ask for better, but you still need to be filling your database and your pipeline with people who are contacts and or potential customers. So I think cold calling for somebody who's brand new or doesn't have a deep sphere is the greatest thing you could do, and it's all about consistency. As long as you're consistent, it'll work. Because I hear people, I do role playing with people through my dialer who are not very talented, but they're constantly improving, and I can hear them getting better and better. And I think that those conversations help with people in our sphere, people we meet in the supermarket, in clubs and events and groups. But you can't. That's a skill that is absolutely invaluable because we have to be talking to everyone,
Yeah.
and there's no better way to get good at that than being on the phone for 3-4 hours a day and just getting constant no's because you're that much closer to a yes. And I wouldn't have any business right now because my sphere, after being a broker for almost 25 years, I was constantly helping other people close deals and I didn't really sell a lot of real estate. So from the time I joined Compass to now, I've done like 12 transactions, and every one of them was somebody I spoke to on the phone who I cultivated and became a lead. So I think everybody should have to do it because it'll definitely get you out of your comfort zone for sure. And those dialers give you all the information you want. Do not call registry, where they work, blue collar, white collar, demographic information. They're unbelievable.
So
If that's what you,
Michael, can I get in touch with you and get more information on the dialer?
absolutely, positively.
Yes.
Anyone
So
can call.
it's
I wish I could
okay.
put my name and where I work in here, my
You
area. I just can't
can.
figure out. Can't figure out how to do it.
So let me share it with you. It's
Call
on
me
the
later.
top, on the
Yeah.
right side. There are 3 dots. Click on that and write down. It'll say rename, and then you put
Okay.
your rename there. It's pretty
Yes.
easy. So
Okay.
I'm not good at tech, but I got that. So
Hmm.
You can call me
one more.
anytime you want. Yeah. Call me
Thank
anytime
you,
you want.
Michael.
Okay, my
One
dear.
more question, Brandon.
Yes.
So I have been door knocking in my farm,
Yes.
and what I find is we have a bunch of absentee owners. So they have getting our newsletter. They get a nice from a company called Liston, a 4-page color brochure giving stats, what's happening in the market,
Yeah,
really
yeah.
impressive stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, but I'm not getting any responses from them. And there
I'm
have
sure
been
you
a
are.
few.
I'll tell you why. Right.
Huh.
And this is, by the way,
No,
Mike
and no
Rivers.
phone calls, no
Yeah.
phone numbers.
This is where the play breaks down. This is where you guys will find these things that I'm about to tell you really invaluable. So it's not a secret that you're not getting any responses from them, right? It's too much. right? So like you give them the brochure, has all the data, this, and this. It all sounds great and makes you feel good. Like this is what I'm doing. I'm supposed to be doing, right? We got to think about that audience that you are sending those people out to. Yes, they're absentee, right? It's great, right? Non-owner, right? What do they care about the most, right? This is a question for you. That audience who you're talking to, sending stuff, what's the thing that they care about the most?
Just I guess they get good rents here and
Yeah.
they just want to keep it as a rental property.
Yeah. So, right, they get good rents, want to keep it as a rental property. So for you, sending out this material, you might be wasting your time with all the numbers and all this stuff because, I mean, they maybe understand it, maybe they don't. What I like to do with the door knocking and this kind of approach is, send something that is about you, not necessarily about what the market's doing in this and this and this and this. They get hit with that stuff every single day, right? Send them something about you and how you're helping people. This is where you humanize. And so when you come back around and door knock, Namita, and you come in and be like, hey, I'm Namita, you might have seen something that I sent in the mail. I help a lot of people in this area, find, their next renter. I'm not sure if you're interested in short-term or long-term, but I can, certainly be of service to you there. That little communication that you sent that made it more about you so they remember you and your face. And maybe there's a little antidote there, not data dumping, right? Data for the sake of data. There's a deluge of data. Everybody gets it. In fact, people are trying to avoid it because there's so much. But just something about who you are, maybe a success story of how you help somebody, and then you showing up and referencing that postcard so they can put a face with the name, I guarantee you will cut through more than what's happening right now, which is I'm sending them this stuff. It's a lot of data. They're getting it from every single channel they engage with, right? On the news, their work. I got all this mail. It's too much. And they guarantee they don't even look at it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, no, let's talk.
Because as you said, okay, they're getting the postcard. As even Mike mentioned, they get the postcard, they see your name, and it goes in the waste paper basket. So, what's the thing that they're going to read? The success story? You think they will, or
Well,
just again, it's a name thing?
So this is why when we talk about you're getting information back from that note, right? So your expectation is they see the postcard, they throw it in the trash, right? So there's a step in between there as to, well, why are they throwing it in the trash? We might assume, well, they're throwing the trash just because it's a postcard and they throw all postcards in the trash. But I'm saying that might be a faulty assumption, right? What you are saying in your postcard, the message you deliver, how that might be showing up might be something that is just, oh my God, it could be overwhelming. It could not just be cutting through. And I'm saying this is one of these cases where, less might be more.
Okay.
Right. So it's not as overwhelming and it's more about you. And it's instead of you going through this deluge of data, having, oh, the market's doing this and this and this and this. Oh my God. Just be like, hey, this is Namita. Here's who I am. I help people who are like you. Right. And here's a success story. And that's it. I'm not saying it's going to work 100% of the time, but at least the takeaway, if they do read it, is okay, there's Namita, not like there's a whole bunch of data. And then you follow up with the door knocking, be like, hey, I'm Namita, you might have seen a postcard that I sent. And just making it, I help people who look just like you.
Got it.
That connection moment. Right? Not the, oh my God, the market's up 10%, 15% this year. Oh my God, it's we can get there, but you got to buy into me first. Like the rest of my clients have.
Sounds good. Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Alice. Alice, I see you raising your hand.
Hi, Brandon.
Hi.
This is my first year in the Chirag coaching, and I'm curious to know, the numbers and information that you shared. I don't know much about you or, but I'm noticing that it makes very good sense when you're talking about converting and this and that. So can you tell me, it sounds like you're very analytical.
Yes.
So can you tell me a little bit about you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess I didn't get a chance to give a full introduction. So apologies. So without talking too long, I have done almost everything. And I mean that exactly how I said it. So I went to undergrad at USC. I'm based from LA. I went to undergrad at University of Southern California, and I immediately started in finance. So I did banking for a couple years in New York City, kind of cut my teeth there, and then ended up working on the lending side of the business. And an interesting opportunity. If y'all remember when subprime mortgages were all the rage back in 2004, 2005, I ran a very large sales team for GE on the lending side that was focused on subprime, Alt-A, all those really risky loans. So it was a very, very interesting time in the market, and clearly observed a lot of different things. But I also saw that at that time, something wasn't right, right? The risk calculus was wrong. I ended up going back to business school, went to Kellogg in Northwestern. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that school, and really focused in on finance there, but realized that like, hey, I'm not going to be the world's best banker or the number one financier, if you will. And so I really started to look at what I felt at the time were my skills and talents, which were sales and marketing. And I started to look at industries and jobs where I could really do that. I didn't know what sales and marketing was at the time. I just knew that I was really good in taking messages, communicating them to people, making them felt by people, and getting to the outcome that I wanted, but not through force, through I feel really good about this, right? This kind of art of storytelling. So I left undergrad. I got another degree, left graduate school, and worked for a company called Diageo, which was, I don't know if you guys know that company, but you guys are probably familiar with the brands if you guys drink. But Johnny Walker, Captain Morgan, those brands. And I ended up running Captain Morgan for the US and Canada, so all sales and marketing. So overseed a very large sales team in the US and a marketing team for our rums portfolio at Diageo. Took a leap of faith and left and moved to Africa to go run Johnny Walker for the continent. So all of sales and marketing for Johnny Walker and the high-end premium spirits for that company, Diageo. So Don Julio, Ciroc, Tanqueray, all these brands. And if you're a Scotch fan, all of the high-end scotches that we had in our portfolio, and ran that whole business for Africa for about a year and a half. And I left and moved back to the US and ended up being the COO of a very large travel company that was backed by the Carlyle Group. And we ended up selling that company after 3 years at the end of 2017. And I took some time off, got my real estate license in Florida, did some work down there. Very interesting market at the time. I missed the whole pandemic boom, but certainly interesting to observe that sales process as opposed to the really structured one where you have infrastructure versus I got to create something from nothing. And one of the things that I realized was that I didn't stay in that side of the business. I ended up actually going back on the, I guess you could say, the corporate side, but really going back to hospitality. But as I found myself looking at the hospitality business, I realized that, in that business, real estate is at its core. And my business partner now, Ari Afshar, who runs Voyage Real Estate under Compass in LA, he and I kind of came together to start working this model and this idea. And really, it's something that it should resonate with you guys about how do I get more out of clients that I just worked with, right? So, and I had this hypothesis that I saw that nobody in this business was really working, and it was mind-boggling to me because everybody was focused on the transaction, right, in real estate. So when I sell a home, you have this big milestone moment. But you guys in real estate don't have a mechanism to follow up with people beyond the, let me send them a newsletter, or let me send them a market update, right? And clients on the other end probably can't wait to hit unsubscribe fast enough. And that's just me being real. Everybody does it. It's the same thing. And it becomes like, wow, Alice, I loved working with you, right? You were amazing. And I get it. You're going to send me this stuff. Buy a house again. The market's hot. The reality is, Alice, like, I just bought a home. We're probably not going to work together for a little bit of time, right? So Alice is stuck. I got someone in my sphere, and I don't know how to get more out of them. So I don't know how to penetrate their wallet. And having worked in hospitality, I saw this amazing opportunity where all of my hospitality sales agents who were calling out trying to get people to travel would fight, claw, scratch just to get a little bit of information from a client, their budget, where they wanted to travel, their home preference. And when they could, they were like, right? It was like the holy grail to get 10 minutes on the phone with the client. I looked at real estate and I go, you guys have unrivaled relationship capital built with your clients to where you become almost their friends. You become part of their network because they love working with you. You have a big milestone transaction, probably the largest that they'll ever have in their lifetime, that you can hang your hat on. We got you there. Here's your outcome, and we got you there. Yet, you don't exploit all that relationship capital. We got you to this big moment. We won, and you don't have a mechanism to transact with them with a higher degree of frequency, right? That is relevant and topical in their life. So when I go back to Mike, who was mentioning, oh yeah, how do you work sphere of influence? I think the thing that realtors lack is you have all of these people in your network that if you had the right conversations with them, and what, not the clients you worked with, but lawyers, people who are insurance, doctors, whoever they are, right? That you can use to actually provide value for the person that you worked with. And what does that look like, right? So I always fashion myself as a salesman, as someone I'm more valuable to the client than just the product that I sell. So you guys will hear me talk a lot about that. I want to be seen as a conduit, right? Your client has this vision of themselves, right? The home is how you're helping them realize that vision, right? Which is why you're having the conversation in the first place. But you can be much more valuable to them as a conduit for commerce. Hey, we talked when we were looking at the home, you had 3 kids. Yeah. Like, where do you guys travel? Oh, yeah, we go to wherever here, we work with the travel agent. Oh, like, I actually have a lot of travel people in my network that get discounts on a lot of homes, villas, whatever. Like, if you need somebody for travel, like, let me know. I can easily set you up. Oh, really? Yeah. Thanks, Alice. I didn't think of you as somebody who could help me there. No, like, listen, I have a ton of contacts. I meet people every day. I transact with them, and those contacts become your network and your sphere. So now you have literally this ecosystem of people that are feeding off of one another, adding value to one another. And now you're seen as the person who connected the dots there and brought value into their lives. Now you have a right to keep talking to them. And what Compass and other agencies are missing is a mechanism at close adjacency to real estate, like travel. Like, if I went to you guys and said, oh, Compass entered the travel space because we transact with a ton of high-end clients. And what do a lot of high-end clients do? They all travel. And what business are we in? Experience, hospitality, and lifestyle. And what do you need to do? I need to figure out a way to keep talking to my clients. So if I had a close adjacency to the world we live in that transacted at a higher frequency that people were doing all the time, you wouldn't tell me that would be valuable that you can tap into? So when Michael calls, right? Hey, you mentioned that you travel for summer. We have a travel division that can help you out there. Michael, I love working with you. Does it mean I get to work with you again? Well, maybe not, but you get to work with my team, right? And Michael, you might actually make some money off of it. So these are all the ways when we talk about opportunity that I think when I observed my team at Voyage, we were just missing. So I saw our agents keep doing the same wash and repeat, right? Not getting the same results, and they were suboptimal results. Right. And Michael mentioned, hey, I got to be talking to everybody here. I don't think of myself as a shameless salesperson. I think of myself as, hey, I'm in this business. I got a ton of value. If you don't, I'm not saying you have to like this value, but I'm really passionate about what I sell and what I do. And I have this energy, right? And naturally, by just being energetic and loving what you do, you start to see opportunity and meet people and connect the dots. But if you're fearful, like, oh, I can't tell people I'm selling real estate or I'm doing this, then no opportunity is going to come your way.
You know, that's the hardest part is that humanizing the conversation and talking to people in your sphere and not feeling, oh my God, I haven't talked to them in 7 months, 8 months, a year. That initial phone call and having something to say that's valuable, or that starting conversation, I think is
And
the hardest
Michael,
thing for me.
you know what? Don't make it so hard. And this is where people mess up.
No, I understand that. Yeah.
Put yourself in their shoe. You know what I do when I haven't talked to somebody in a while? I just did it this morning. Hey, you just crossed my mind. I figured I'd reach out just to see what you're up to. It's that easy. Think about if I were to send you that, not knowing, if say we met 2 years ago, right? And I texted you that, what would you think if I texted you that? Would you think, oh my God, Brandon's so annoying. Oh, that guy. Like, no. Hey, Brandon, like, thanks for reaching out. I'm doing this,
Yeah.
this. Oh, we should catch up sometime.
Yeah. I have no
Right?
problem reaching out with anyone.
Me neither.
I love talking to everybody, so I have no problem with that. I'm talking about in general agents. They go, oh my God, I don't want to feel like I'm bothering them. It's like that's gold right there. You should. No one's gonna. Everybody's so busy in their life that they're not even gonna think that they haven't spoken to you in a year, or 18 months. They're just living life. So sometimes it's nice to pop in and just say, just like you said, was
Michael, you
thinking
hit the
about
nail
you.
on the head, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, the ego. They're going to be so annoyed with me. Who do you think you are? You don't think people have stuff going, just like you have stuff going on all the different times? Nobody, I tell you this, nobody cares. And this is, and this is something I learned from one of my best mentors, and I didn't understand it. And I'm going to be crass here, so if you allow me this. But when I was cutting my teeth in marketing, I was spending all this time. Oh, I got to get the data right. This and this and that. Da, da, da. I was so maniacally focused on what I was doing, the assumption thinking that everybody else was just as focused on what I was doing or cared just as much as I do. Nobody cares. Think about how much stuff you have going on in your life around you, right? All the stimulus. You got bills to pay. You got, if you have children, you got children. I got to worry about this. I got Trump doing this. I got this doing this. I got the world. The world, it's crazy right now, right? No one is thinking about your product or what you do. And I tell people at Navigate on my team, right? When we sell a prospecting platform, nobody cares about the prospecting. None of you are waking up being like, oh my God, I need a prospecting platform today. Nobody cares. You guys are just fine. You may struggle, may not, but you exist. So if you work from the standpoint of nobody cares, but I have to get someone to care, I have to break through. I not only have to get you to listen, but I have to get you to want to listen again or take an action or, God forbid, part with some money. And if you knew no one cared, it would change how you communicated if you had to get to that outcome, right? You'd start thinking less about, oh my God, my product, more about, hey, what is it that you need? And how can my product help you? And if it doesn't, hey, no harm, no foul.
Right.
Right. But it changes your thinking about things. Now, Alice, I know you asked one question. I'm literally talking about a million different things here. Hopefully this is resonating with you. But like, these are the things that I see salesmen, whether it's real estate, whether it's you're selling alcohol, whether you're selling hospitality, people get hung up on that they think you're challenged. They struggle with, oh my God, how do I make this leap? Or how do I figure this out? And the fallacy that people will tell you, I've seen it and I disagree with it, is, don't put yourself in that person's shoes. Don't be so myopic. And there's validity in that. You may not be representative of the population, but you're a human being and you get stimulus just like they do, and you respond, you have to respond a certain way. And who's to say that my response looks any different than Michael's or Alice's or Namita's? And I know how I feel when I'm approached like this. I know what I respond to. Well, when someone speaks to me in this tone versus their feature dumping, I'm turned off. Right? When they start with their product and don't ask about how I am, I know I get turned off. Right? So it's all these things that are around us that aren't like a science. We just have to be listening and thinking about how we respond to things. Right? And we can pick up on a lot of different things. The tone, right? When do you sound authoritative? When you sound, hey, I'm out here, I'm just helping people. People just look just like you. Right? And just by me switching that vocal inflection, right, seeming vulnerable, I've now gotten you to trust me because I don't know all the answers, but we'll figure it out together. And so all these are tactics, if you will, but they come from a good place because it's just knowing how human beings respond to things and being present about what is happening in the world around us and how do I map what I'm doing, right, which is valuable, to where you're at. And it might not cross paths, which is fine. Hopefully when it does, you'll think of me because it was more than just, oh, Compass is da-da-da-da-da, and I did da-da-da-da, and the market's doing. Everybody's doing that. Right? So this is about how do we do something different? Right? So I hope that answers your question, Alice. Maybe not.
It did, yeah. I was initially when you started, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so analytical. I mean,
Yeah.
because I used to work for Keller Williams and they give you a disc, like a profile so that you kind of know
Oh, yeah.
where your clients are in terms of a personality so that you know how to service them.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so when I saw everything that you were putting out there, I thought, he is very analytical. But
Well,
I see your point because, like I said, if it's going to help me to convert those leads, I'm in.
yeah. And Alice, I'll tell you this. I'll be the first one. And by the way, as you guys get to know me, I am an open book, right? I'm not saying I do everything right. I'll tell you where I failed. I still struggle with this. As much as you see these slides that are really analytical, I'm off the cuff salesman too, meeting people on the street, like, oh my God, like I'll remember it in my head. I have to do it after this call. I have to follow up with people. And I still struggle with it. And I struggle with the fact, like, hey, if I know this is priority, why aren't I prioritizing it? Right? What is blocking me? I'll find everything else to do except for that thing that I know is priority. Why? Right? And there's value in understanding that why, right? Is it because, hey, I don't want to be rejected? Or maybe I don't know my product that well. So while I know I need to do that, I might get called out on something that I don't know. Right? So there's all these different things and we all go through it. But what I found in all that is, listen, not everybody gets it right. I think there's a humility and almost a power in saying, hey, I don't know the answer to that, but we'll figure it out. I'll find it out for you. Right? Like, oh, I actually haven't done that before, but I'm really curious about it. What are your thoughts on it? Right? So moving from I'm not an expert to this to, hey, I'd love to hear what you think, and switching that conversation to now you're going to take up the time and tell me. And because I asked you what you think about something, instead of me trying to ramble on, pretending I'm a subject matter expert getting exposed, I asked you what you think. You took up all the available airtime. You love me because all I did was give you an opportunity to talk. And who doesn't like somebody who gave somebody an opportunity to talk? Everybody does. The best tactic on an interview. Ask them the question, let them talk. I really like that guy, Brandon. Why? He didn't answer the question, but he let you talk for half an hour about how good I am. So I walked away with a good impression. All these things, right? And so as you start to have more conversation, get more data, see how people respond, like that's the beauty in when you cold call, even though it's rough, right? Meeting people, seeing them respond, empathizing, understanding that's attention. That's an opportunity area. And even taking some of that insight and using it and working with your sphere. But I think going back to Michael's earlier kind of question, I know we're way over time here, guys. So again, if you have to fall off, fall off. But like the working of the sphere is, I think, really valuable, because if you can be of value to those people in your life who are around you, who are just sitting there running businesses, right? Never thinking about you. But hey, like my attorney, give you a perfect example. I have an attorney for our business. I'm on a WhatsApp thread. Someone was looking for an attorney to start their company, right? So like, oh, hey, I actually know a guy, Armin. You should talk to him. He did the exact same thing for my company. Set those two people up, right? Now, this may be too much information. I got a big outstanding bill with Armin right now, right? But Armin is like, hey, Brandon, you connected me to a new client. Don't worry about that. Just because I got in the way of opportunity. So the client that you just sold, Alice, who's a doctor, who's an ENT, and you might be in the supermarket talking to somebody, ran into a friend like, oh yeah, I'm really sick. Oh, you should use Dr. Johnson. He's an amazing ENT. Let me set you up with him. Dr. Johnson, I got somebody, kicked him, he's a client of yours now. He loves you, right? Now Dr. Johnson, all the realtors who are trying to get a hold of him, I like Alice. Well, shit, Alice gave me some business. Now you have a license to keep talking to Dr. Johnson. I helped you out. Now help me out, right?
Yeah.
Pro quo. So these sessions will be, if you guys want, and again, I kind of want to switch it up. And Mike did a great job. Our approaches are different. Some are outside the box, outside the industry, bringing him here, just asking you guys to look at it a little bit differently. Or maybe it's not as complicated as you think. But this is what the conversation and dialogue will look like. And I think you guys will find that each conversation you have after these calls will be, your approach will be slightly different. I think your outcomes will be a little bit better. And you'll feel more comfortable working your sphere and cold calling, knowing that it's not the end of the world if they don't say no. Or sorry, if they say no. It's not you, right? It just wasn't what you were offering. And that's okay. When a commercial, by the way, runs on TV and you stop looking at the commercial because it wasn't what you're interested in, the commercial doesn't care. It keeps airing, right? At some point, it's going to reach somebody and someone's going to go to the supermarket and buy whatever it is. That's life. And that's okay. Move on to the next. But take the data, make sure you're reflecting on it, and be like, maybe I ran that commercial at the wrong time. Maybe the messaging wasn't spot on, right? Maybe it was to the wrong group.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is there, I would like to have some new role play partners, and I'm not sure, should I just put something in the chat, or should I just go look up everybody's names in the platform, start reaching out? Because I have,
You guys not
a
have each
role-play
other's
partner.
information?
I'm not sure. Is it in the portal?
I don't know. I'm going to figure out.
is
I'll
in the
talk to
portal.
Laura.
It is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm looking for role play partners with anyone who's willing to do it, and because I want to be sharper as well. But so if anybody's interested, I put my number in the chat. But I'm gonna probably reach out to everyone.
Yeah. Hi, it's me again, Nomita.
Okay.
Yes. What are in our previous tracks? I'm trying to do this. Yeah. Us. When we were doing prospecting and bio tracks, each of those trainers actually got the whole, all the people in that track and gave us like a spreadsheet with all the people's names, numbers,
Oh, okay.
location, so we could then role play. And yes, Michael, I would love to role play with you. You're such
My
a,
number, my
you're
number's
like
in the
so
chat.
experienced.
I put my number in the chat. Just text me, anyone.
Let me find that. Yeah. Okay, got it.
I'll see if I
Sorry,
can
Brandon,
talk
I'm
to
not.
Shirag about getting
Yeah.
that list, because you guys should have that. I think everybody here should be connected to one another. That's the magic of this, right?
Yes,
I put
that's
it in
why
the
I
seller
signed
track.
up.
Yeah, I put it in the seller track. I'm looking for role play partners, I didn't get anybody to communicate with me. So
Yeah.
figure this is a prospecting group that would be the
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
appropriate place to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I have to jump off because we're a
Yeah.
little over. And
Guys, you leave it up to
out of
me.
town.
I'll talk all day long, right? You imagine the people who work for me,
Let's go
right?
make money, man.
No, but listen, I want you guys to listen. There's the benefit of structure to this, but there's also a benefit of learning from each other and like letting the guard down and being honest about what's working, what's not, and being open to different approaches. Just know that most people out there doing the same thing and it's broken, right? And like, here's an opportunity for you to test, try some different things. It's not all going to work, but use some different approaches that may not be talked about in real estate a ton, right? Because it's kind of this closed kind of network that work in other spaces, in other industries that could be really impactful here and move the needle on some of these conversations. And we'll get into some of the other ways because there's a different approach. I take a look at the business with that I think will be kind of mind-blowing for you guys, make things a lot easier by reframing what it is you guys do, where you guys sit in this value chain that can change the way you look at how you engage with clients in real estate. That we'll talk to in subsequent sessions, but like this is the value of these things, right? Like the coaching is when the play breaks down, what do you do? But getting more out of you and getting you to kind of feel comfortable experimenting, that's where the growth comes.
Yeah.
Right. So
What is Vulcan 7, Michael?
That's the dollar I use. Why don't you call me and I'll talk to you about it.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Brandon.
Okay. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
yes, I'll see you guys next Wednesday. Cheers.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.